We turn to blues now. For instance, a blues that might have been kind of popular in the days of the steamboat, or just a smaller boat that some fella had, and he kind of got the blues for the river. He got fed up with everything around him and he wanted to go somewhere. The tune called Deep River Blues, or Big River Blues sometimes.
There's something unique about a gentleman down in this little railroad town of Wartrace starting to build guitars. And he came in really in some ways at a sweet spot and began to show what could be done by building a really high-end, you could say, boutique guitar.
Let the rain drive right on, let the waves sweep along.
And then how that turned into making contact with Doc and Merle Watson, forming a relationship. And Doc really brought Gallagher onto the main stage, so to speak.
River Blues. There ain't no one to cry for me, and the fish all go out on a spree when I get them deep river blues.
My first recollection of Gallagher Guitars was listening to the Will the Circle Be Unbroken album, and you can hear Doc clearly talking about Mr. Gallagher building him this fabulous guitar, and that was the sound that everybody got to know. Doc and his Gallagher guitar, it was it. And honestly, that was one of the only alternatives for high-end guitars. You had companies like Martin and Gibson, but Bluegrass was predominantly Martin guitars. Yet, that was an era where they weren't building their best guitars, so smaller companies like Gallagher, Mossman came out and started kind of building a boutique-style guitar. So this was kind of, to me, what I kind of associate as the beginning of boutique guitars. Experience with Gallagher goes back to being a teenager in church, and my youth director had a 1967 G50 that he purchased when he was in school at Lipscomb University in Nashville. And he went down to Wartrace and picked out the wood with J.W. Gallagher. And that guitar was always the prize guitar. Even after we left home, we'd come back to visit. We want to go see Ray. We wanted to see Ray, but really we wanted to see his guitar. And so that was my first experience with Gallagher.
First time I played a Gallagher was probably when I was 7 or 8. I grew up in Bedford County where the company originally started, and Gallagher Guitars were always the nice guitar around town, the one that everybody really wanted to get their hands on. So always held Gallagher very highly regarded.
Prior to being involved in the actual building of guitars, I enjoyed them for years. But my life went a different direction. And I ended up becoming a clinical psychologist. And that's really what I did in my adult life. In regards to guitar, I mostly played to an audience of one, or my children suffered through various songs I can still tell you about, or just playing around with friends. I can just honestly say I thought I knew a little something about guitars until I became involved in building. And I learned something every day, and I enjoy learning something every day. And very often what I learn is that what I thought I knew was incorrect. My retirement plan, I hope, is where I get to the point to where I'm not as involved in the day-to-day management of the company, and I can be the one that sits at the bench and focus on the craft in front of, because I enjoy that too.
Before I worked here, I was building violins on my own. I originally apprenticed with a violin maker in East Tennessee named Gene Horner, Charles Horner. He's a violin maker, mandolin builder, and has built a few guitars, but I was apprenticing with him and building violins on my own. So when I hopped on 3 years ago, the shop manager was Darren Gallman. He's teaching up in Nashville now at the Musicians Institute, but he kind of taught me the whole top testing process, where you don't just take a top to a certain thickness like so many builders do now, especially big builders, but actually looking at each piece of wood for what it is and giving it, it's really its best opportunity to be a great guitar.
I tell people that we're a young company with a lot of history. There are so many good guitars out there and even great guitars. And so also the question is, well, why Gallagher? Why are we doing what we're doing, and where do we fit in with that? Part of it is that we're trying to stay true to our roots as a Tennessee company and Tennessee craftsmanship. I feel really proud that we're promoting that craft and we're part of it. And so that's an important part to me of the Gallagher story. The other thing is, I think we stepped in to that history of Gallagher and modernized the guitar in some ways, from the knowledge that's been learned over the years and the consistency of what we can do. And so I think we can put a guitar out there that can stand the test against any other.
Since David has kind of taken on Gallagher Guitars, it is a whole new build. It still has a lot of the reverence of those older guitars that were built by Don Gallagher and his team, but now they're kind of taking it on as a more technical, high-end build, which is really awesome. They're building fantastic guitars using some of the highest-end techniques, and that is a really good addition because it brings that traditional side of Gallagher to a whole new audience. It's really cool to be able to bring that into the shop and show people that, that Gallagher guitar you remember from the 70s, the 80s, they're building it now, except it's even better than what it was then.
I'm already seeing signs of what the future can look like. In one sense, this past year, I've seen Gallagher guitars at the IBMA award show. I've seen them on stage at Station Inn, at the Grand Ole Opry. We're going to see more artists playing Gallagher guitars, which is important to us because that helps people know that they're out there, and for them to check us out and see what we're offering. There was a time I think Gallagher was more recognized than what it has been the past few years, and I see us being right there again, and then even growing beyond that. We're going to be building more guitars than Gallagher ever built.